Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of our English Learning Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're talking about a very common question. Why is learning English so difficult? If you've ever felt frustrated while learning English, don't worry, you're not alone. Let's explore some reasons why English can be challenging and how you can overcome these difficulties. Chapter 1. So many words and phrases. English has a very large vocabulary, and this is one reason why many people think it is difficult to learn. Did you know that English has more than 170,000 words? That number might sound scary, but don't worry, you don't need to learn all of them to speak English well. The good news is that most people only use a small part of these words in daily life. In fact, about 3,000 of the most common words make up most of everyday conversations. One of the challenges is that English has many words that look or sound similar but have different meanings. For example, the words here and here sound the same, but they mean completely different things. Here means to listen, and here means this place. This can be confusing for learners because you have to pay attention to the context or the situation in which the word is used to understand its meaning. Another tricky part of English is the large number of idioms and phrasal verbs. Idioms are phrases that don't make sense if you take them literally. For example, if someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs," they don't mean animals are falling from the sky. It just means it's raining very heavily. Phrasal verbs are also confusing because they change the meaning of a verb when combined with other words. For example, break means to separate something into pieces, but break down can mean a car stops working or someone starts crying. The variety of words in English can feel overwhelming at first. When you're learning a new language, it's easy to think, how can I ever remember all these words? But the secret to learning vocabulary is to take it step by step. Start with the most common words and phrases that people use every day. Don't try to learn everything at once. For example, focus on words that are useful for your life, like food, family, work, or travel. Once you are comfortable with these, you can slowly add more advanced vocabulary. Another tip is to use the new words you learn as much as possible. Don't just read or write them. Try to use them in your speaking. For example, if you learn the word delicious, use it when you talk about food. You can say, "This pizza is delicious," or "I ate a delicious cake yesterday." The more you use the words, the easier they will be to remember. Learning vocabulary is like building a house. Each word is like a brick, and over time, you will build something strong and useful. It's okay if it feels slow at the beginning. Every word you learn is progress. Be patient with yourself and enjoy the process. English is a big language, but you don't have to be perfect to communicate. Focus on learning step by step, and soon you'll find it easier to express yourself and understand others. Chapter 2. Different accents and dialects. One of the reasons English feels so difficult to learn is because people speak it in many different ways. English is a global language, which means it is spoken in many countries around the world. Each country has its own unique way of speaking English. Even within the same country, people from different regions can have different accents and dialects. This can be confusing for learners because the words and grammar may stay the same, but the way people pronounce them or use them can change a lot. For example, let's look at the word water. In American English, people often pronounce it as water, but in British English, it might sound like wata. In some parts of the United States, like the southern states, people might even say it slightly differently, adding a softer tone. These small changes can make it hard to understand someone if you are not familiar with their accent. Another challenge is that some English words are completely different in different countries. For example, in American English, the word truck is used, but in British English, people say lorry. Similarly, what Americans call vacation, British people call holiday. If you are just starting to learn English, hearing these differences can make you feel like you are learning two or more languages at the same time. But don't worry, this is normal. Languages change and adapt based on where people live and how they use the language. Instead of feeling frustrated, think of it as an interesting part of learning English. You are not just learning a language, you are also learning about different cultures. This makes learning English a very rewarding experience. One way to deal with different accents is to focus on one accent at the beginning. If you are watching American TV shows or movies, focus on the American accent. If you enjoy British TV shows, start by learning the British accent. Once you feel comfortable with one accent, it will be easier to recognize and understand others. Over time, your ears will get used to the differences, and you will understand more easily. It's also important to practice listening as much as you can. Listen to podcasts, watch videos, or talk to native speakers if possible. When you listen often, your brain gets better at understanding different accents. At first, it might feel like you don't understand anything, but don't give up. Even if you understand only a few words, it's still progress. Finally, remember that communication is more important than perfection. Even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand people with strong accents. The goal of learning English is to connect with others, not to speak perfectly. If you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask someone to repeat it or speak slower. Most people are kind and will try to help you. Accents and dialects are not something to fear, they are something to celebrate. They show how diverse and beautiful the English language is. Be patient with yourself as you learn, and remember that understanding accents takes time. Every day, as you listen and practice, you are improving. Keep going, and soon you'll find it easier to understand English speakers from all over the world. Chapter 3: Cultural Differences in English. When you learn English, it's not just about learning words and grammar. It's also about understanding culture. Every language is connected to the culture of the people who speak it. English is no different. Sometimes what people say in English might not make sense to you because it comes from their culture, habits, or traditions. These cultural differences can make learning English more difficult, but they can also make it more fun and interesting. For example, have you ever heard someone say, "Let's break the ice"? This phrase doesn't mean they are going to break actual ice. Instead, it means they want to start a conversation in a relaxed way. Another common phrase is, "It's a piece of cake." It doesn't mean someone is talking about dessert. It means that something is very easy to do. These expressions are called idioms, and many of them come from English-speaking cultures. If you don't know the cultural meaning, these phrases can be very confusing. Another part of culture in English is how people greet each other. In some cultures, people might bow or shake hands formally. In English-speaking cultures, greetings are often casual and friendly. For example, in the United States, people might say, "Hi, how are you?" even if they don't expect a detailed answer. It's just a polite way to say hello. If someone says, "How's it going?" they are not asking for details about your life. They are just being friendly. Understanding these small cultural habits can help you feel more comfortable when talking to English speakers. The way people use humor is also different in English-speaking cultures. English speakers, especially in countries like the UK or the US, often use jokes, sarcasm, or playful teasing. Sometimes, the humor can be hard to understand because it depends on the situation or cultural knowledge. For example, British humor often involves irony or saying the opposite of what you mean to make a point. If you're not familiar with this style, it might be confusing or even feel rude. But don't worry, over time, as you watch shows or talk to people, you'll start to understand it better. One of the best ways to overcome cultural differences is to expose yourself to English-speaking cultures. Watch movies, listen to music, and read books or articles. This will help you see how English is used in real-life situations. You'll start to notice patterns in how people communicate, and you'll learn new phrases that you can use. For example, watching a comedy show can teach you about humor, while reading a travel blog can show you how people describe new experiences. It's also a great idea to talk to native speakers if you can. Ask them about their culture, and don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand something. Most people will be happy to explain and help you. Learning about the culture will not only improve your English, but also make you feel more connected to the language and the people who speak it. Cultural differences might feel challenging at first, but they're also what make learning English exciting. You are not just learning a language. You're learning about new ways of thinking, living, and communicating. Be curious and open-minded, and enjoy discovering these differences. The more you understand the culture, the easier it will be to speak and use English confidently. Remember, every time you learn something new about the culture, you are one step closer to mastering the language. Keep exploring and have fun with it. Remember, every step you take brings you closer to fluency. Practice every day, stay positive, and celebrate your progress. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to follow the podcast and share it with your friends. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.